again, or? Okay, cool. Can someone grab the door, Jay?
Journey on Joomla. And we have hashtag by JWC, so please use that.
The hallway noise gets a little loud. Okay. So, welcome to A/B testing. Which way does your duck face? In this 8-hour workshop, we will go over all of the different ways about rubber ducks and what makes up rubber duck technologies. So, but in all seriousness, this is a talk about A/B testing. But I am very informal in how I present, so it's going to be very interactive. You can heckle me, death threats, make fun of the fact I'm from a country that elected Donald Trump. So, but really it's going to be an interactive session, and we're going to hopefully get into some software if the VPN lets me, and we'll go from there. So, who is this guy? I am an open source evangelist. My name is Mike Demo, or Demopoulos if you want the full name. And for my day job, I am an evangelist at BoldGrid. BoldGrid is a all-in-one page builder plugin for, wait for it, WordPress. You might be wondering, how are you the treasurer of Joomla and an evangelist for a WordPress product? I am married to open source. I love open source technologies, and then at the end of the day, it's not a battle between us, Drupal, Joomla. It's all about keeping the software open, allowing people to own their content, and letting the user and the client decide what works best for them. All the techniques I did when I was in charge of a Joomla agency on the digital department, but they work no matter what your platform is. Even if you're using like a Wix, Weebly, or Squarespace or something that isn't even open source, all these techniques work for that. So that's my day job. I'm the evangelist for BoldGrid. So if you want to see a demo of an easy-to-use WordPress page builder, happy to show it to you. For my Joomla job, I am the treasurer of Open Source Matters. Open Source Matters is the legal entity that handles trademark and finances for the Joomla project. They're based out of New York. I came into the role outside of an election, so I'm an interim treasurer. We'll see if that keeps up after the new transition elections that are going on right now take place. And I basically pay our vendors like this to make sure that we can have events so that all the money that sponsors give is used in an appropriate manner. So I'm also the sponsorship manager for the Joomla World Conference, so and the MC here. So all the wonderful sponsors that you see lined up at Sponsor Alley, I have a relationship with all of them. So please thank them for being here, because without sponsors, this event would not take place. I don't know if you've compared tech conference tickets, but DrupalCon down in the United States is like $700-800 for a similar size ticket. So we really work hard to keep the price as low as possible to get back for the great content. And I'm a husband. I'm a video game lover, former cast member at Walt Disney World, so and did a Disney podcast, and I'm an owner of a wonderful dog named Balana, and that name, if you get it, will show you how big of a geek I am. So, what is A/B testing? Has anyone here done any A/B testing so far? What have you used? How have you done your testing? Okay. Okay. Sure. What were you testing?
Mostly we wanted to know the wording, how the wording works.
Okay.
We wanted to know how to react to the call to action and words.
Okay. Cool. What have you tested, and what were you testing?
Oh, I was using
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Was there someone else, or? Okay, cool. So A/B testing is really controlled. I know a lot of people that, and maybe you guys are guilty of this, they, let's say you have a hero image on your homepage, and one day you change it from a picture of a dog to a picture of a cat. And then when you have the cat up, you sell more. You're like, well, the cat obviously did it. And you just try to find rhymes and reasons without actually doing testing. So testing is very much controlled, and we'll go over what that means in a little bit. Do you have a question? No? I thought I saw a hand. Okay. I'm going crazy. Okay. Yeah, so it's very much controlled. So you want to make sure that what you're testing is statistically relevant. Correlation does not prove causation. So you have to make sure that whenever you do any testing, no matter what you're testing, that it's in a controlled environment using like a plugin, component, or a third-party service. And we'll talk about a few of those things here today. You want to make sure that it's statistically relevant. You want to make sure that it's not within the margin of error. You can figure this out a few different ways. There's lots of algorithms online that will tell you if something's statistically relevant or not. But if you're only getting 100 visitors and a swing of 10 people can completely throw off your results, they may or may not be within the margin of error for a scientific A/B test. I personally use a service called VWO, Visual Website Optimizer. You don't have to know any code to use this tool. Obviously other ones out there as well. And it will actually tell you if the test is statistically relevant or not, or if it's not valid, or if the test is just within the margin of error or normal traffic for your site. So make sure it's statistically relevant, because I know, especially on low traffic websites, they only do one or two things and they get double traffic, but double of a dozen doesn't really tell us that much useful information. So you have to be more careful when you're doing A/B testing on low traffic sites. I can define a low traffic site under 5,000 monthly visitors, because you don't want to do any multivariate testing at all. And if you're not aware what multivariate testing is, that's if you change multiple elements on a page and you have multiple sets of multiple changes. So you could literally have dozens and dozens of permutations of different home pages or landing pages or calls to action, and then you just won't be able to throw enough people through a test. Whenever I do a A/B test for a client, I like to run through 10,000 visitors before I even look at the results and share them with the client. But that's just me. Your mileage may vary based on what you're trying to do. Also, with statistically relevant, you have to have a hypothesis statement. To remember is like hypothesis statements in school, writing those hypothesis statements when you're like in science class. I think if I drop this egg, I hypothesize it's going to break because I'm a klutz. Basically simple hypothesis statement. You need to write them for your clients. You should not do any testing at all without a strong hypothesis statement with a detailed experiment. Now, I know you're thinking, experiment statements, this just seems overkill. I want to change the color and see if I make more money. But you do want to make sure that all of this is based on data and that you have everything documented, otherwise you're just guessing. A good sample hypothesis statement is, we believe that when marketing, Susan, that's if you had a persona, if you did persona development, I believe that when marketing Susan visits the product page with a 3-column layout, will convert X% more, and we believe this to be true, and then you link to other learning, or you link to maybe a white paper or something you have there, and then you write it down and how you're going to test it. And then you test it. And then you say, is it true or is it not true? Did it work? Did it not work? If it worked, you keep it. If it didn't, you toss it. Honestly, A/B testing is nothing more than building a magic money machine. And I tell clients all the time, I can give you a box, and every dollar I put in that box, it gives you $2. How much money would you put in that box? They always say to me, well, I'll give you unlimited dollars to put in the box. And that's all you're doing with A/B testing is you're pushing that button, feeding it dollars until you stop getting return back, and then you figure out what you need to change and start increasing that over time. So you are literally building magic money machines. That's what websites are for you or your clients. And us as web developers, we're really caught up. We think we know everything. I'm a designer. I know user experience. I can design this, and it's going to be best. But guess what? I've had clients change color theory overnight because I was able to give them 80% more sales on their product pages. It all depends who's visiting their website. 80% of adults have a disability or how they affect the internet. So we need to go where the users are, where their users are, and testing will help us move the ROI, which will be good for you because you'll get more money and you'll be able to do more testing. It's good for your client because they're going to be happier and they're going to get more results, and it's good for their users because you're building a valuable product and service that is servicing their visitors, which is really at the end of the day who you're building the website for, not for your client, but who the client is serving. You want to do micro-testing. We talked a little bit about multivariate testing. I am not a fan of multivariate testing unless the site has a large amount of traffic. I define large amount over 100,000 visitors a month. And I like to test small things. And I test everything. We're going to go through a chart and I'll show you all the wonderful, stupid things I test. And you're going to laugh at me and say, that is stupid, Mike. And I'll be like, yes, you're right. But I've made clients money doing exactly that. And it might work for you, it might not. But that's why you want to start small with easy stuff, get the clients to trust you. Because you can go way out in left field. But you have to make sure you have your hypothesis statement and you're going down the systematic approach. So, what do you test? So when you were doing the email test, what would you change on the email? Like the subject line or the body or the call to action or?
How sometimes we don't know when, and we.
Okay. Okay, so two like completely different. Okay. For the other person who did email, what were the differences? Okay, cool. Like a subject line or something. Oh, cool. Cool. Awesome. Great. So what to test? What can you test on your website? Now, basically, you can test everything, but here's some ideas to get started. You can test buttons. Buttons are one of the easiest things you can test on your site. And buttons can have a bunch of different testing elements inside of them. So let's say you have your button. It says button because I'm not a copywriter. And it's green and has a 2-pixel radius. It has a little drop shadow. And it does a little hover effect when you hover it. And when you click it, it does something like a button should, right? And what could you change that? You could change the color. You could change the border radius. You could change the color of the border. You could remove the drop shadow. You could remove. You can make a gradient, make it flat. You could change the drop shadow and how intense it is. Change the hover effect. Remove the hover effect. Change the font. Change the text on it. See where I'm going with this? Any single element you can change 100 different ways. And I did that once for a client who was an insurance company. They did dental insurance. And we had a button and we changed everything about that website. We had like a person said, oh, this says get a free quote. We're going to make it a 30-second quote, or we're going to test it on instant quote. And we're going to make have a testimonial, and we're going to have a no obligation screen, and we're going to do all these fancy layouts. And we tested all these different things. The single thing that moved that needle 80% more than anything else, and the dozens and dozens and dozens of design hours that client spent, was changing the color on a 2-pixel border of the call to action button. And you might be wondering, hey, how can that be? That doesn't make sense. And I'll be like, you're right, it doesn't make sense, but don't figure it out, just follow the data. I'm a big fan of data-driven decisions. If you try to read too much into it, you'll drive yourself crazy. You'll second guess your decisions, and just let the data run your site. And that being said, you do have to live inside the brand standards of your client and whatever their requirements are. But I like to do data-driven decisions. I'm a huge fan of data, and you can use data to work for you. And that client couldn't be happier. And we tried other things as well. And yeah, you never know what that magic combination is going to be, but That's why multivariate testing is very hard to know what that one thing that you changed is.
So do you start at the bottom of the buttons, or do you start at the top?
It depends what your page is. We're going to pull up a couple sample pages, and we'll give you some ideas. It also depends on what the goal or the ROI for that specific page is. So if it's a really long form, like direct response page, like those ones that scroll forever, that gets cheaper the lower you go, for like digital ebooks or whatever. I would focus more on the stuff above the fold, testimonials, that type of stuff. But if it's a more standard landing page, I would focus more on the buttons, the taglines, things like that, but single elements at a time. Text, we talked about that. You can change text on headlines. You can change first person and third person. You can change how is it polished or professional, or is it conversational? Do you use slang? Do you not use slang? Again, this all has to work inside your client standards, but a lot of times websites seem like they are just regurgitating the most polished, pretty language out there and the most easy way to use, but it's not resulting. Not every user responds to really polished, written websites with lots of text. Some people just want to get to their information quickly. As you remember, people are not reading the majority of the content that you have on the site. They're scanning, they're quickly getting their decision and moving on with that. So, I would change the text you write. I would try to write in first and third person, and do some different elements regarding text as well. Change the call to action a few times, and see what works with that. Images. We're going to talk about this. Who puts images on their website? Show of hands. Not. I was expecting more people to have images on their website, honestly. Now, if you had a website of only images, probably a different website. But so when you have images, who uses stock photography from sources like 123ref, Wonderful, great sponsors, and who uses original photography from the client? Okay, when you use stock photography, why do we use stock photography? What are some of the reasons why we go to a stock photography site? Okay. We don't have the assets. Other reasons? Cost. Yeah. Quick and easy. Yes, exactly. So when you're doing your images, I like to test stock versus candid, and and different types of stock photography, because there's actually different libraries out there. If you really dig in stock photography sites, you can get past the standard, like business shot of 4 people working at a table pretending like they're having a meeting, all holding pens and clipboards. You can get through that and find some really original photography, do filters, things like that. But I like to test stock and original side by side. I also like to test male and female, young, old, different combinations thereof depending on what the website is. I also like to change the orientation of how something's faced, and that brings us to our duck. So who came in here just because duck was in the title? Okay, we got one. So
A few years back.
there was a study, I believe HubSpot published it, I'd have to double check, and they had a picture of a duck. I believe it was a mallard, but I could be incorrect about that. And the duck was facing one way. He was facing to the right. And they A/B test him flipped, facing to the left. The right-facing duck converted 4 times more than the left-facing duck. It was, so the text was on the left, the duck was on the right, and then so the beak then started facing the text, I believe. Yes. If I'm remembering correctly, I need to find the study so I can pull it up in my slides. But so that's just a small example of how something that you might not think about instinctively to test that does work and does work with that. So, and then I've had everyone say, well, it's because the beak was pointing to the text. Yeah, you're probably right. I'm not a psychology major. I just care that it sells more for the client, and then I'm happy because the client's happy, and then I get more money because they want more testing and more changes. So it's a win-win-win. And basically test everything. You can test everything on the site. You can test price points. You can test products. You can test, how many things you lay on a page. You can do a whole bunch of different types of testing, but again, it's all focused on what your ROI is. Now I have a cheat sheet that I use. And these are split testing ideas. Now, I grabbed this from a book that I'm going to share with you from ClickFunnels. Russell Branson wrote a book called A/B 108 Split Tests. And he is a classic direct response marketer. You know, long form landing pages, videos, all sorts of stuff. But he has a really popular funnel building software called ClickFunnels. And he's done quite well selling health supplements is how we started in the digital marketing space. Does anybody here watch CNBC The Prophet, that show? A couple people. He was on there a few weeks ago helping with the watches, building the landing pages for the watches. He was on there for that. So I lifted this from his book, and I'll show you how to get a copy of his book, which is pretty convoluted because he is a direct response marketer, so I have to take you through the maze of how to purchase it without spending $800. And trust me, it's not easy. I do subscribe to some of his products. I like his learnings, but again, it's one of those classic guys. They'll keep selling you something because the next course is the next solution. But these are some of the tests that I've done, and the examples are. I'm not a designer. I do have designers that work with me to make it all look pretty and match the brand standards. But test professional and unprofessional. On some sites, an unprofessional layout with Comic Sans or some other font might make sense depending on who's visiting that website. Sometimes it does work. Do you ever get those solicitation like fundraising letters in the mail, and some of them look like they have like little Sharpies all over them and corrections, like little notes in the margins to say, "We really need your help, Mike. The whales are dying." Those type of things. It's because some people respond really well to those types of less polished advertising approaches. Test photos versus illustrations. Illustration art is some of the most powerful stuff you can get, and test it against a photo. Test your colors. Change the brightness and contrast. See how that works. Test with and without a border. Test a blurry image versus a clear image. Static versus animated. Ugly versus sex appeal, depending on what you're looking for. Sometimes having photos of, quite frankly, ugly people in silly postures sometimes snaps people out of that just surfing attitude and get them to pay attention to whatever your thing is. Again, I caution you, please make sure you use a designer and you get client approval before doing any of this, because you are holding their brand in their hands. But once I show them the data and I say, hey, we're just going to test 1,000 people, just 2% of your site, just to start with, just to see how it works. I guarantee you no one's going to call and upset. I've never had a client say, wow, I had somebody really upset because they got this version of our website and they didn't like it. No one's ever told me that once. Static versus interactive, with the radio buttons, things like that. Donald Trump's website is actually pretty good with the interactive thing. His donation button, it lets you pick it looked like you were able to pick your donation amount, but it was actually just an image, and you click it and it said $100 and you have to change it. But people thought they could pick their donation amount, things like that. And you're talking about professional versus unprofessional. So there's a lot of money in American political campaigns, as we all know, and all the candidates do fancy fundraising pitches, really fancy things. One of Donald Trump's most successful, and I can pull up the video, maybe, fundraising pitches he did last week was donate, your name is live on my website. Live on my website. He did this before at the RNC, but it was on the Megatron, more polished, fancy graphics. 5 hours, it was in the corner just because I couldn't believe he was getting away with this. People donating, and their name was live on the website. Can anyone guess how they got the name live on the website? Any ideas? If you're having thousands of people donate and you need those names to be live on the site, any ideas how he did that with the largest campaigns in history? They had a live video feed of a laser printer printing them out 10 at a time for 5 straight hours. Just a camera on top of a laser printer printing out names. And they were printing it double-sided, so you saw the blank page come out, it go back in, and then come out with the names. So it was the most silly thing that I couldn't believe they got away with. But they raised millions of dollars by doing a non-professional thing. And guess what? It appealed to who they were trying to target that campaign with. So don't laugh until you've tried it. Some other ideas. Professional stock photo versus amateur informal photo. One layout versus another layout. One call to action versus another call to action. Images versus text only. I've actually seen text only stuff work quite well for some of my clients. Upright versus angled, button versus underlined text. Regular border versus false border and drop shadow. Custom ad design versus familiar UI elements. You can do some of the Facebook examples or things like that. Original image versus mirror image. We have our duck again. One font style, size, case, whatever, with another. Standard ad shape versus a custom ad shape. Although with the way I see everything on the internet, it seems like a rectangle is now the custom shape and the circle is the standard shape. Positive versus negative, as far as positive attitude or negative things. This works well, especially if you're selling insurance. I had a client who sold a product that was meant to prevent house fires because stove fires are the number one cause of house fires. So there was lots of doom and gloom and you're going to die type of stuff in their advertising, but they sold their product. Why is my thing? Here we go. Generic versus relevant to the time period. This example is want a girlfriend. You can meet single women here. Relevant to the time period is home alone on a Friday night. Or do you want a girlfriend by Christmas? You can mention pricing or discounts or leave it a mystery. A lot of big box retailers do this. They say add to cart to see the price. Some of those are contractual. Some of it is just because they want you to add it to the cart. No trust logos versus trust logos as seen on things like that. And this was from the Weapons of Influence by Robert Gennady, and he talked about consistency. You want to be able to reproduce it. We're giving you a free trial, download a free report. Consistency, encourage visitors to take small steps before your goal and they do a big commitment. Scarcity, we only have so many left, only 5 spots, only 5 remaining. Like, use photos of real people versus models. Lucy is a new mother just like you. Authority, endorsement from an authority figure as seen on America's Got Talent. And this is a funny thing about America's Got Talent. A lot of the contestants do this. You'll notice that all of these people touring, you see as seen on America's Got Talent. But you've actually watched, they did a study, most of the people who advertise as seen on America's Got Talent, their ticket sales go up and they're booked more often. But if you actually watch their episodes, because people say, oh, they're on America's Got Talent, they must be good. They're kicked out in the first round. Those are the people that everyone's making fun of. But they're still putting it out there because it's helping their cause. Because people say, well, if Mike said he was on America's Got Talent, he must not have been an idiot that got heckled off the stage in the first episode. And no, I was not on America's Got Talent. Social proof, 1 million satisfied customers, things like that. Appeal to 8 universal desires. This is all the stuff we've all learned in marketing school. Number 1, survival, enjoyment of life, life extension. Number 2, so you got your fear and pain, benefits, not features, ask a question, be controversial. Use short words, evoke the 5 senses. I'm going to give some examples here. Feel the 2,000 cc motorcycle engine beneath you, things like that. You got the 8 universal desires, freedom from fear, pain, and danger, social appeal, care and protection of loved ones, to be superior, winning, keeping up with the Joneses, comfortable living condition, sexual companionship, enjoyment of food and beverages, and survival, enjoyment of life, and life extension. And you see all this stuff every day in some of the big marketing brands as well. Oops. And it just is thanking all the people who contributed to that. So, honestly, I like to tell people to play and have fun. A/B testing is one of the funnest things you can do. And if you go to the watch Luke Summerfield's keynote address, who's a friend of mine, he's going to talk about growth-driven design. And he's all about data-driven decisions too, but that's in a website architecture. This is just in a small single test case architecture. So I want to talk to you about that book. How do you get it? You go to .comsecretslabs.com/free-book. The reason I give slides on how to do this is because if you don't want to have to pay for anything more than you have to. But I really love this book. I keep it on my desk, and I use it all the time, and it's just one of many resources out there. So I go to that website. You will see this, and when I migrated it over on my new laptop, the picture became small, I'm not sure. You'll see a nice landing page. You fill out the form to the right. Easy enough. You are going to say, hey, would you like something for just $29.99? You say, no thanks. You don't check the box. I don't want that. Unless you do want it. Then you get taken to this page where you see I'm offering you an 80% discount on what you just said no thanks to. So you go all the way to the bottom, and it says, no, thank you, just the book, I'm cool. Then you go to another video saying, hey, are you sure? I know you signed up twice, but I got a really great offer for you. This time it's 80% off the discounted price on the last one. You go to the bottom, say no thanks. I'm not knocking his product. I paid for everything he's saying. I do like his products, but it's really focused on direct response product selling. So if you're selling supplements, things like that. But I took this thing and applied it to everyday clients in the insurance and banking fields. Then you'll see this page. Close it. If you click anything on this page, you will be buying something. Anything on the page. So you just close your tab. You'll get an email, and then if you'd like, you can unsubscribe. So that is how you get the book. So I was going to do a live demo, and we have about 10 minutes before we have to break. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's a country thing or whatever from the hotel. I'm not able to log into BWO because normally I pick a website, I do the changes live, and show you how the tool works, and we come up with some A/B test experiments. Instead, I could pull up a couple sites, we could talk about them, but I want to make sure we leave time for questions because we do have another keynote right after this. So anyone have any questions before we just kind of look at some sites over the last 10 minutes? No? Yeah.
All right, so I can see how this is especially useful on sites where the conversion is deal.
Yeah.
So on some sites we have I'm trying to think of larger clients that I have, for example, that might benefit from this more, because they need to be able to afford it.
Can I get an example of like the newspaper?
They really don't sell anything. Look at you like I do. That's what they sell. It's on advertising.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, all right, this site is a pretty good site.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, all right, so if the site's really complicated, I'm thinking, even if you're the Joomla site, it's very complicated. I'm just thinking, man, this would be a lot of work to change the homepage. Figure out, hey, how do I direct users?
Sure. That's why I like VWO. VWO takes out code completely. What you do is you install a JavaScript into the template, into the Joomla template, PHP, index.php. And what you do is you do all the changes using VWO as editor. You can do redirect changes, you can do color changes, CSS changes, change out photos, change out text, delete whole sections. That's why I like to do the live demo because it's completely drag and drop. I can add columns, remove columns. I could literally type in that newspaper's website and completely rearrange the homepage inside the tool in about 5 minutes, and then you just say how much of the users you want to test. I only test 20% of the visitors that hit the site because if you test 100%, then it's just going to yo-yo so much. You only want a subset, and then it's going to the JavaScript's going to change it on the fly inside the browser agent itself, and you only need to do any actual code changes if you say, hey, this worked really well, and I want to use this full time. Then of course you have to do the permanent change in the classic method. But you can do all the testing without needing to do any code inside of the Joomla site at all. Yeah. Oh, okay. And that's why I normally log in. I've done this 12 times. I've never not been able to log in. to the tool
I
before,
really thought there was
unfortunately.
another question
Any other
before
questions?
we got in, like, are you
Yeah.
really here for a conference? So I'm just gonna.
It depends how many visitors, right? I like to see,
List of all of
at
our
least a few
menu
thousand
items
visitors
on
hit
our
a
main
site.
Joomla
In a
instance,
perfect
and
world,
then a
about
couple
5,000
different
visitors go through my test.
But scalability.
So, and if you're only testing 20% of the traffic,
Probably everyone's
I'd like to only test 20% of the traffic if I can get away with it. It could take 2 days, it could take 2 months. It really depends on how much traffic that site is getting. Now, if you have a low traffic site, don't do multivariate testing. You can test a higher percentage, up to 100%. And you can also have your threshold of success be lower. On BWO, you got 3 choices on how you get your test data. You can do quick learnings, which is less statistically relevant. You can do statistically relevant, which means you have high confidence in the recommendation the engine puts out, or a balance, which is kind of the best of the both. So it really depends on how much traffic you're flowing through the test and on your site.
Version of what a hyper.
Sure.
That's some bank.
Sure. Yep. It's going to tell. It depends on what your KPI is. So let's say your KPI is to fill out a form on that page, as an example. If a lot of people are not filling out that form, it's going to take longer. If like both tests, you don't really get much response. It'll actually tell you in the tool that I use, hey, this test isn't doing well. We would kill it before even letting it continue. But at that low, I would probably test 100% and just do a single variant. And I would do quick learnings because you're already pretty low traffic. You'd probably have an actionable result and a recommendation from the engine in about 2.5 weeks. So now if it's like head and head, side by side, and like one goes up and the other one goes up, it's going to take longer because, yeah, exactly. But it'll tell you. I've had tests after 3 days that says the traffic's not different enough, kill this because you're not going to get anything useful out of it. So, other questions? Yeah.
And people, want it good and fast and cheap and delivery.
Good.
But there are just some managing expectations there.
Mhm. I mean, anything's possible, but that's why you need to only do a single element change. And that's why I only like to test a subset of the traffic. Because
this is more
it
of
looks
a
at
CSS
more
question
than what it
where
also
we have
looks
a-
at that
we have
same time
websites which
period. You
have
need to say, okay,
CSS and
that button's
with
yellow.
not
20% of the
major
people,
changes, but
20% of the
when
people are being
minor
tested.
changes and we deploy
Of that
new
20%,
CSS,
half of them are going to see the
users
yellow button,
have
half of
their
them are going to
local
see the
browser
normal button.
cached with a older copy.
And then it's going to look
So
side
there
by
is a familiar
side. Now, if at the same
conversation,
time
do
you
F5
are
by launching
changing
in
the
a private
price
session,
left
it
and
gets
right,
resolved.
you're still
But there
only
is a risk
changing
about
that
a
yellow
business user
button,
outside
but
of the
if you
network
were
who might
featured on
be hitting a
CNN.com
older
and
version
you
or
go up
older
across the
copy,
board, yes,
he
that
is
could
not getting
influence
the
it. But
updated
that's why you do a
CSS
single
update. So is
element
there
and
a
you're testing
strategy
side
in
by
CSS
side
where you
because
could handle
if it's
that
an outside
not
influencer,
more
all
from
other things being equal,
JavaScript,
except your
but on
single
the CSS
testing
level?
element, you should be able to figure out if the button had an impact or not, which is why I recommend using a tool that does all the calculations for you. Versus doing it on your own. I have a home page. I'm just going to make the button yellow one day, and sales go up, but that's literally the only variant, and I don't know if that's tied to something else, whatever the case is. So it's very important to test parallel at the same time.
Okay.
Did that answer your question? Yeah. Maybe get a different influence, but if you're but if you're testing side by side, you're also testing the yellow hat at the time of the red hat, and that's still a result because people get all these messages broadcast at them all the time, and if that red hat is performing better, regardless of the reason, it still might be worth looking at for whatever your KPI is.
So once you got your, once you give it to the client, say what it's on the client, and we have it with the client already.
You know,
Yeah, and you can actually do shopping cart building inside in VWO. I had a client who was on an ASP.NET custom shopping cart, and they were a medical device, and it was like a 15-page checkout process. It was just insane. Because what they did is they saw samples for people that were doing new medical technologies. So if you needed a catheter for whatever your medical tech is, just for a prototype, you would go buy 5 catheters or tubes or whatever. Yeah, so we actually were able to change some of the layout in there and say, hey, combine some of these pages together, or even the order form, change it from, let's say, a multi-step to a single page, all inside of VWO, because it just changes the output at the time. So you can do a lot of that, and then if it results in something useful, then you have the hard work of actually changing the long package to match whatever you put inside the system.
Yes.
There's other options out there. Optimizely is another one. There's Joomla extensions that do this too. I just haven't found one that gives me the data and the margin of error and the recommendations that I like as much. But there's other options out there too. I'm not saying VWO is the only way to go. There's lots of stuff. But I think it's fairly priced, and I think it's really easy to use. And I like the reports because I can just give them to clients and they like it too. Yeah. What? Well, we out of time, but you can it's 11:59 and 12 o'clock I believe is our stop time, right? Yeah. So you can find me. I'll be here all weekend. I can see if I can log in later today. The IP is being blocked from the hotel, so I'm going to contact their support to see if I can do something like that. But you can get a free account, no credit card needed, VWO.com. Again, there's other options out there. This is the one I happen to use, just like I happen to also use WordPress for my day job. And you haven't thrown anything at me yet. But anyway, thank you. VWO is what? Visual Website Optimizer. Visual Website Optimizer. Anyway, I'd like to end on time because I want to make sure everyone's able to go for the keynote, which you'll see me introducing that. Again, please thank our sponsors. Thank you guys for coming. It's a real honor to be able to speak with you today, and I do appreciate it. And make sure to enter that photo contest. Thanks.